Hello everyone, welcome to the session on principles of management. So, in the previous session we have dealt on module 2, today we shall deal with module 3 on managerial skills and decision making. I am Dr. Babita Timmaya, assistant professor from Department of Management Studies, Visvesvaraya Technological University, Mysore. So, today before we start with detail about module 3, let us just try to understand what are the contents which are there in this module. Now, in module 3, which emphasizes on managerial skills and decision making, it comprises of the following elements, like we will be discussing on managerial role and skills, Mintzberg's managerial roles, essential managerial roles, emotional intelligence, decision making process, rational decision making models, bounded rationality and decision making in uncertainty environments, and group decision making and consensus building. So, let us just try to understand all these components in detail in this module. Yes. Now, moving on with the first topic, that is of on managerial role. Now, what is managerial role? The role that the skill set that a manager displays in the organization at various level in various situation. It encompasses the behavior which is adopted by the managers or the executives at various management functions. So, in the previous model we have understood what is planning and organizing, and today we are studying about the other functions of management, wherein we are talking about the decision making. And here we have to understand that any functions of management, it should start with planning. It also includes the role of managers, and this is what is explained in this module. As a manager, you are not just trying to oversee the process, you are not just trying to understand the functions and implement the functions, but along with all the other functions, you also need to inspire your teammates, your group mates, you need to motivate them, build up their morale, lift them up when they are low, help them to understand the situation, understand the task and procedures, and help them to handle the situations, and you as a manager should know how to tackle the challenges which is there in the organization. This is the essence of managerial role or managerial positions. Now, having understood this managerial role, let us try to understand. Here we have one scholar who has given 10 managerial roles, which is further classified in 3 subheadings. He is none other than Henry Mintzberg, and the roles defined by him is named as it is Henry Mintzberg 10 managerial roles. Now, this 10 managerial roles which a manager has to perform in the organization is split under 3 heads. One is interpersonal head, wherein in interpersonal head he is further classified into figurehead, leader, liaison. What is these? I will tell you, brief you in detail next. Then comes the informational role. As a manager, he has to go with information role, which is further classified into monitor, disseminator, spokesperson. And the third role which a manager has to play is the decisional role, wherein he will be taking decisions as an entrepreneur, disturbance handler, resource allocator, and as a negotiator. So, the 10 managerial role is split in 3 categories, that is interpersonal role, informational role, decision role. Now, having seen this and having got an outline of 10 managerial roles briefed by Mr. Henry Mintzberg, let us just try to understand each element in detail under these 3 subcategories. Now, starting with the first role of interpersonal role. He has said as a manager, he has to figure out his role. A manager performs various duties and he represents himself on behalf of the organization, on behalf of his teammates, on behalf of his employees in different gathering. It could be social or official gathering, and he is projecting the company and his teammates, and there he has to take the role of a figurehead. He has to project the organization, he should project his teammates in such a way that anybody outsiders viewing him should be able to gauge and understand positively about the organization as well as his teammates. This is the first interpersonal role of a manager. We call it as figurehead. Then as a leader, a manager as a leader, he has to provide direction to his teammates, direction to his employees, motivate them, guide them, foster a positive work culture, a work environment, and help the people or the employees in the organization to attain the vision and the mission of the organization. What are vision and mission, I think you have understood in the previous module, where I have said vision gives us the direction and mission helps one to understand under what area of specialization the organization is dwelling in, and that enables the lower level managers to set the objectives for the different departments. Now, as a manager, he has to lead everybody in the organization, motivate them, uplift their morale, and help them to achieve the organizational objectives. That is the second interpersonal role. Then we have the third role of a manager under interpersonal, liaison. Manager is an agent in between the top level and the lower level. It is not just within the organization, it could be outside the organization between different stakeholders, because an organization is not isolated from the society, and hence an organization encompasses itself with various stakeholders of the organization, and it is the responsibility of the manager to maintain a good relationship with all the stakeholders. So, manager acts as a middleman, as an agent, as a liaison. So, a manager needs to establish and maintain a good healthy network relationship with the individuals and the groups. It could be within and outside of the organization among the various stakeholders. It could be with the employees, it could be the suppliers, the creditors, the various government departments, the agencies, the registration offices, the government officials. So, this is basically the first role when it comes up to interpersonal role of a manager. As an interpersonal role, a manager needs to be a figurehead, he should lead, he should have a good liaison. Now, having understood this, let us just try to understand the second role of a manager, that is the informational role. Now, in information role, a manager has to scan the environment. He has to understand, he has to monitor the environment of the organization. The organization will have internal environment as well as the external environment. Now, why this environment has to be scanned? To understand how these factors can influence the organization directly or indirectly on the decision making. So, this is what we call it as monitor. A manager has to monitor the environment, both internal as well as the external, for information relevant to the organizational goals and operations for day-to-day functioning of the organization. This second role as an information role is of the disseminator. A manager communicates information internally, ensuring that employees are informed about the organizational goals, the rules, the policies, the procedures. So, manager has to disseminate the information to the other subordinates in the organization, make them understand what is expected out of them and make them understand what are their roles and responsibilities and help them to achieve their goals. He has to disseminate the information. A manager has to be a spokesperson. He represents the organization to the external stakeholders, and hence he has to communicate the policies, the decisions, the achievements to the public, media and other organization. In times of crisis, there is something known as organization crisis. Whenever there is certain crisis in the organization, more the organization tries to run away from the media or the public who has caused the harm, more it is going to cause a damage to its existence. Better to face it humbly, accept if there is any mistake or clarify if there is something to be clarified and justified. That helps a manager to maintain a good liaison between the organization and the external stakeholders. So, coming to the second role of a manager of information role, he has to act as a monitor, monitoring the environment. He needs to disseminate the information and he has to act as a spokesperson with the external stakeholders of the organization, if required even the internal stakeholders also. This is with respect to the informational roles. Now, moving on to the third role we have is the decisional roles. Decisions are taken by various managers at various levels in the organizations. We know the top level managers, the middle level and the lower level managers. A manager has to think and act like an entrepreneur. A manager needs to initiate the projects, oversee projects, think creatively, innovate, invent within the organization, seeking the opportunities for the growth and improvement. We know who an entrepreneur is, but these days, because of the development of the country to such an extent, because of localization and globalization, many organizations do encourage their own employees to come out with certain creative ideas, innovative ideas, for which they fund their employees to come out with the ideas to be converted into products or services. This is what we call it as intrapreneur. And this is possible when you have a good manager who can think and act like an entrepreneur in the organizations. When he is open, when he is wise, when he has all the good ethical principles, he would not just encourage himself, but he will always encourage his subordinates to come out with their innovation and creativity. As an entrepreneur, as an intrapreneur we call it within the organization. Then disturbance handler. Now, manager has to address any kind of crisis, I said to you. When there is a crisis, uncontrollable situations, uncontrollable situations, the disputes are bound to happen, crises are bound to happen, the conflicts are bound to happen within and outside the organizations. Now, how to handle these disturbances is in the hands of the manager. So, he should see to that he maintains the stability within the organization, resolving all the conflicts and issues amicably. That is the second role under decision making. The third role of a manager is resource allocator. We know that resources are not abundantly available. There is a crunch, and hence these resources has to be very judiciously allocated within the different departments of the organization, not just allocated but also utilized. Now, how do we see to that? Who has to take care of allocation and utilization in an optimum way? It is the role of the manager. He should allocate the budget, the manpower, the equipments required for different departments, and how they should be used optimally in the organization by different departments has to be ensured by the managers. This is what we call it as a role of a manager as a resource allocator. As a negotiator, I said the manager, he acts as a liaison between the various stakeholders internally or externally. Now, as a liaison, what he has to do? As a disturbance handler, what is he trying to do? He is trying to negotiate, strike a proper deal which can benefit the organization as well as the other party as well. It all depends on the role of a manager, personality of a manager. A personality of a leader who is compromising nature, he will let go the benefit of the organization for the benefit of parties. So, a manager negotiates with internal and external stakeholders to resolve any conflicts or to strike any kind of a deal or to reach any kind of an agreement amicably, benefiting both the parties or all the parties. Now, these are the three different major roles of a manager. Now, moving on to the next slide, applying Mintzberg management's role in the workplace. How to apply this three different role of a manager in the workplace. Self-awareness. Recognize your own SWOT, your own strength, the opportunities, the threat, the weakness in each managerial role and strive for continuous improvement. So, self-awareness is very important to implement the three major roles of a manager. Skill development. Invest in enhancing your skill. That is why we say that an individual who is persistently learning certain skills, updating himself or herself, is always a person who has a competitive edge than the other who does not update himself or herself. So, one has to update his skill, have a proper negotiation strategies, proper communication strategies, and have a good decision making skills to excel in different managerial roles, different managerial positions, and this is very important. Then as a manager, a person has to understand how to emphasize on relationship building, foster strong relationship within and outside the organization to facilitate a proper collaborative and to help the organization to achieve its goal. As I told you, a manager acts as a liaison, a manager is a negotiator, a manager is a disturbance handler. Now, when he has all these roles to play, he should know how to maintain a good relationship with the various stakeholders in the organization, and to build this relationship, he has to enhance his skill. Yes, he has to update his skill of relationship management, and that is the reason why these days you can see most of the organizations do have a separate cell as customer relationship manager. Their duty is entirely dedicated to meet the to maintain a better relationship with the customer and to see to that the customer is highly satisfied and they get converted to be a loyal customer to the organization. Then the last one is a strategic thinking. Strategies are coined out by the managers for the other levels of the organization. So, adopt a holistic approach to management by integrating the analytical skills, the knowledge on industry, the management, the competitor, the innovative thinking into decision making process. So, to apply the three major roles categorized by Henry Mintzberg, a manager has to have these qualities in the workplace, that is self-awareness, the skill development, relationship building, strategic thinking. Now, with this we will just try to end this session, wherein today we have briefed you about what a managerial role is all about and what are the 10 different role of manager given by Mr. Henry Mintzberg, which has been categorized into 3 different categories. And then to apply this managerial role, a manager needs to have certain skills. So, having discussed all this, we will try to end this session here. Thank you so much.